Hello, my name is Blake Patterson, and welcome to Real Values. On this week's episode, I discuss Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon. If anyone has read or watched any interviews or pieces about him, they will know Martin Scorsese has been aching to direct a Western. I recall an excellent interview between Charlie Rose and Scorsese about this aspiration during the release of The Age of Innocence. 30 years later, Scorsese has brought his dream of creating a Western to fruition, and the result is a hauntingly considered reflection of American genocide and its complexities within the nation's fabric. While many Americans recognize the tragedy of what happened to Native Americans now, few know the unsung voices due to the socio-political limitations of the media and how they adjust these narratives. After writing this statement, some readers may question Scorsese's directorial role since he is not a member of the Osage community. However, Scorsese's investment in listening to their stories is as clear as the compassion within his latest achievement. As the motion picture evolves, Scorsese and co-writer Eric Roth subvert the genre and racial stereotypes one may fear by gradually revealing the layers of each character. Killers of the Flower Moon involves the return of World War I veteran Ernest Burkhart, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, to his wealthy uncle William King Hale, played by Robert De Niro, who lives with Ernest's brother, Byron, played by Scott Shepherd, on an Oklahoma reservation. Once they pleasantly reunite with each other, King makes it clear how he wants Ernest to be involved in his scheme against the Osage Nation by referring to marriage because he is greedy for the community's money. Throughout the film, Scorsese emphasizes the notion of an insurance plan to concentrate on the deliberate mechanics of King's role over the lives of the Osage Nation. Tasked as a cab driver, Ernest becomes friendly with Molly Kyle, played by Lily Gladstone, and gradually involves himself in her life more. Even though she recognizes his flirtation initially, Molly falls for Ernest's goofy sense of humor and sees him as a loyal partner for the future. Scorsese effectively constructs a dynamic between the pattern of murders and domestic life for Ernest and Molly until they eventually intertwine. The emotional and thematic core of the motion picture is how Ernest continues to deceive and attempt to murder Molly until the conclusion. Ernest and Molly's relationship reflects King's deceitful regard for the Osage Nation as they represent the fusion of capitalism and racism within the idealism of the American dream. Even though the description may suggest a reductive form of symbolism, Scorsese and Roth humanize these characters to their darkest and most vulnerable characteristics, and the performances are convincing in their portrayal of the past. From DiCaprio to Gladstone, the performers carry weight in their performances because they capture their characters' public facade and private selves unless those two parts invade. In a cross between Charlie Chaplin and Marlon Brando, DiCaprio plays the slow-witted Ernest sincerely by displaying his ignorance and revealing the brutish masculinity within himself in various moments. The performance can be humorous due to his responses, but Ernest's emotional turmoil transcends his positive presentation of himself to Molly. De Niro captures the facile generosity of a wealthy criminal to a T as he balances the external compassion of his public actions with his internal contempt for the Osage community as he kills and takes their money. After her potent work in Kelly Reichardt's Certain Women, Gladstone impresses more in her abilities to convey the evolution of Molly's opinion toward Ernest from the initial sarcasm to a belief in her husband as a caring individual. All of it is believable through Gladstone's eyes and gestures since she trusts Ernest to take care of her and their children as her health worsens due to diabetes, even though King and Ernest want to kill her. If the audience could not believe Molly's viewpoint toward Ernest, Killers of the Flower Moon would fall apart in its thematic execution. There are also exemplary supporting performances from members of the Osage Nation, such as Cara Jade Myers and William Ballou, in heartbreaking turns, and governmental characters like Jesse Plemons and John Lithgow as they enhance the gravity of the conflict. While parts of the motion picture may remind some audiences of Scorsese's previous efforts, the sequence when Jack Nicholson's Francis Frank Costello breaks the cast of William Billy Costigan Jr.'s arm, played by DiCaprio, against a pool table in The Departed informs the dynamic between Ernest and King in a similar scene involving a paddle. What is more impressive about the abuse in Killers of the Flower Moon is how the viewers watch King punishing Ernest rather than De Niro paddling Ernest. Though the 2006 crime drama has its passionate champions, one can feel the overly exaggerated mechanics of Nicholson's portrayal instead of acknowledging the gangster Frank Costello. The dominant versus submissive dynamic solidifies the unequal familial relationship between King and Ernest, even if Ernest lionizes his uncle. Despite their amiable occasions, they are as emotionally detached from each other as the people they manipulate for profit. Artistically speaking, Scorsese has never been bolder in his choices narratively and aesthetically, and these creative decisions contribute to the overwhelming pathos of the tragedy. In the beginning, Scorsese develops a black and white silent film aesthetic to acknowledge the Osage Nation's significant role financially at the time before King and Ernest, like the government, would take control. The artistic choice also establishes Scorsese's motivation to focus on the facial expressions of his players because they reveal insights without expressing them through dialogue. While the motion picture is full of dialogue, there is nuance beneath the line delivery to heighten the sorrow of the deception in the narrative. These intricacies are especially relevant when Scorsese shoots close-up and medium shots of DiCaprio and De Niro when interacting with other characters. Considering the film's pacing, Scorsese builds Killers of the Flower Moon with subtle rage about the injustice and those responsible for their roles as victimizers until there is a cathartic release in a subversive act of compassion. If audiences expected Scorsese to conclude the movie with Judge Pollock sentencing King and Ernest, they would be surprised by Scorsese's choice to evoke these details through the stage setting of a radio play for past crime cases. It is even more shocking when Scorsese appears in a movingly direct cameo where the director expresses how obituaries omit the murders surrounding Molly's life. In this moment, Scorsese brings to the forefront America's cruel apathy toward Native Americans and how the system rewrites the darkness of the nation's history to emanate a non-existent, idyllic past. On another level, Scorsese confirms his long interest in how a person's psychology can inform their violent behavior towards others. The meta-sequence solidifies Scorsese's exploration of disturbed masculinity by noting his critical humanization of them. The deliberate emotional rhythm of Killers of the Flower Moon complements the bottled-up rage of Travis Bickle from Taxi Driver, as the transition from Scorsese's cameo features a long shot zooming out from a drum to present a contemporary tribal dance by the Osage Nation. Even though this shot may mislead people to think of pleasant times now, Scorsese develops this shot for the emotionally shattering recognition of a community that should be larger than it is. If Leonard Cohen and Neil Young brought spirit to the pastoral atmosphere of McCabe and Mrs. Miller and Dead Man, the late Robbie Robertson does the same for Killers of the Flower Moon by functioning with masterly controlled tension. Like those masterful revisionist westerns, Killers of the Flower Moon is a confrontation with the American ethos to remind viewers of the past and to act as listeners by creating room for unheard voices. Thank you for watching this video. Have a great night.